Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ben Powers coming at you from the Commander's Voice. My guest today is friend of the show, Chris Langlois. Chris has been on a couple times talking about his connection with the famous Easy Company, 2nd Battalion 506, the Band of Brothers. He's the grandson of the incomparable Doc Rowe. Chris, thank you for joining us today, man.
Brother Ben, good to be with you again.
So what's really exciting, Chris has a new book out, and it's called Patrick the Paratrooper. We'll get a little product placement in there for everybody, and we'll get another shot up on screen. So Chris is a published author. He's written two books now on Easy Company, and this one is told from the perspective of a very young man who finds himself in the midst of Easy Company. So, Chris, let's just kick us off. Let's just talk about the book itself, what the motivation was, and then we'll talk about its structure, artistry, and things like that.
Yeah. So, as you know, with my first book, it was really when we started losing these guys from Easy Company, when we lost the Winners and the Compton and the Bill and Babe and the Malarkey. Not only were those guys, just stalwarts of Easy, but they also shared one thing in common: is they all went to schools and talked to kids. And so it just hit me when we just lost those guys that we were losing history being delivered to our schools. And so that's what motivated me to write the first book. And that's probably a middle school and up type book. And but that we talk about planting seeds, right? So it's always been in the back of my mind. I wish if I could find a way to get a little bit younger audience and start planting those seeds. And so I saw Patrick when you hold him up there, that exact picture. I saw that on Instagram. Ricardo Lima had posted it on his Instagram, and I go, you know what? That looks like a 10-year-old boy. And that's where just the lightning struck.
That's an amazing inspiration. So the book itself follows the familiar pattern of the when the boys got together at Toccoa, went through their training, then their advanced training at Bragg, shipped overseas, their time in the ETO, and then winding up at the Eagle's Nest. So was it interesting from the standpoint of you're trying to tell it from the perspective of a younger kid, or was it just retelling the story?
Yeah, as hard as my first book was to try to condense World War II into 62 pages, and half of those are illustrated, you can't really put the Battle of Bulge on one page. It's hard to do. And hopefully I did it on my first book. Even more of a challenge to bring the entire war from start to finish, because Patrick is playing at home with his Green Army men when Pearl Harbor happens. And so, I thought about how do I tell 1940s world and life to kids these days who have a cell phone. I mean, my daughter got her first cell phone at 18 months old. I mean, how do you tell them that there used to not be cell phones and you got your news from a box
Right.
that did not have a screen? And so, I thought it is what it is, and I'll let the parents, open up that door to kids. It's an example also of, hey, life was different in the 1940s. You're living in a world now that didn't exist back then. Kids didn't have what you have. Kids played with little Green Army men, and so it was a challenge. But I thought it would be a fun way to get kids thinking not only about the war and planting those seeds, but there's a different world out there. There's a different reality the past has. And so that brings us into the history, right? So if you tell kids even just 75 years ago what life used to be like, you're starting to plant that seed that, well, let me study history. I want to know what life was back then. And so I think there's a huge advantage in my little mind to starting to plant those seeds just in history in general, because and as you probably believe, this country does not teach history anymore. And so we are doomed to repeat the failures of the past, as any civilization is. And so I think any little chance to plant the seed of history and the love of history and the interest of history is a good thing. So yeah, Patrick, is inspired by Pearl Harbor. And so patriotism is a big thing, as you know. A man of the flag who served under the flag. And I think we're losing some of that. So I used a lot of themes that I wanted to convey. Patriotism. Patrick gets wrapped up in the patriotism of America being attacked, and he enlists. And so I wanted to show that theme, because millions of guys and gals signed up, and so I wanted to show that was the mindset of the time. So Patrick joins up, sees his paratrooper recruiting poster on the wall. That was a big thing back then, as you know. The posters and the recruiting posters and the art that goes along with it, which I enjoyed over the years. And he ends up in Easy Company. So yeah, it's it was a challenge to tell that story from a young 10-year-old point of view, and hopefully try to convey all those messages of his buddies, of love of country, of serving, the challenges of fighting in Bastogne where it's cold. Of course, there's a little ode to the medics, as I would have to do to my grandfather. I thought that
Certainly.
was to honor him and honor those guys. I love the medics, and then the last page, I think the artist really captured Patrick's face when he's at the eagle's nest. His eyes is closed and it looks like he's got some tears coming down, and he looks exhausted and things like that. So I wanted to show that these guys, war is not just a glamorous thing that these kids play on a video game these days. That it was a tough challenge that these guys did. War is not pretty, and his buddies got hurt. I don't think I really said that. Oh, I did say that they died. Yeah, I mean, it's not just a video game where you turn the computer off and it goes away. I mean, these guys suffered and lived and died together. Some of them lost limbs, and so, but it has a kind of a surprise ending, and I won't ruin for anybody. But I wanted them to understand that it's a little bit different than what they're playing on the video games.
Roger that. I thought that both the Eagle's Nest illustration and the Bastogne illustration were, and I want to talk about Ricardo a little bit, but the illustrations themselves were beyond being beautiful artwork. I would not have thought before I read it that you could convey the gravitas of both situations in something that a little kid could be shown. And look, a 10-year-old, okay, maybe not a little kid, but still an elementary school child. And Ricardo nailed it.
Yeah.
So
I really think.
Just amazing. So you saw Ricardo on Instagram. Did you know him, or did that just pop up?
Yeah.
And I got to get in touch with this dude.
Just scrolling through, man. Just scrolling through. He had posted that picture. He had created that image, and I go, man, that just looks like a 10-year-old boy. And I can't have a full head of hair and be creative. I shock myself at times so that I can come up with this, and I give myself way too much credit. But I was just really excited that I came up with that idea, because I'm not a creative guy. But I just thought, what a neat way to put a young kid in the shoes. Let them see themselves in Patrick. And I'll tell you, I don't know if I'll sidetrack a little bit. Do you know have I told you where Patrick, the name, came from?
You have not.
And I can't remember what boy's name I had before. I really can't remember. But Marianne Malarkey and I were signing books at the Show of Shows in Louisville. And we were sharing a B&B. It was the end of the day, and this was before COVID. And I had this idea, and I was telling her about it. And she goes, "What about Patrick, the paratrooper?" And Patrick is Don Malarkey's son, who passed away.
Oh my
and I
goodness!
Go, perfect. Why not Patrick? And so it will forever have a very touching history in and of itself, just with the name. So very special. And I was honored, to be able to honor Malarkey and Patrick. And give him the name for the book. So it worked out perfect.
No, that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
That's cool. So when I guess in this day and age, you just hit Ricardo up on Instagram. Boom. Hey, my name's Chris, and this is my idea. You in? Or how long did it take you guys to collaborate?
Yeah. And he does a lot of fantasy type stuff, fantasy type art. And so I think this was like a request. Somebody wanted it for their, I don't know what their some account or something like that, but that's not his normal gig. So he's not a military guy. So we had to work together. Hey man, listen, this is what I'm looking for. And kind of break it down and make sure that he understood this is what military type stuff looks like. So he was very accommodating in that regard, something that he didn't know as much about. So that was fun in that regard, kind of educating him. And he's like, "Oh man, I didn't know anything about this story." And so that was kind of the cool part, so we went through that journey together.
That's really interesting too, just from the standpoint, before we started recording, you and I were just talking, I had mentioned there's kind of a community out here. And sometimes I forget that the larger public may not be, in on Band of Brothers was a cultural phenomenon, but it's coming up on 25 years old. And right. So just for you to say that a professional, a creative person wasn't really familiar with the story. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah,
And so that's fascinating.
yeah, right.
So, because he didn't have this familiarity, obviously you were able to share from your experiences and background. Do you know whether, and I'm asking you to put words in another man's mouth, but do you know whether Ricardo spent a lot of time with the miniseries, spent a lot of time with period photographs? Did you send him anything special? How did he get his models?
That's I don't know that we didn't, at least we didn't talk about it. So we didn't talk about that. He went back and watched the entire series on a binge. That's a good question. I don't know. I kind of sent him, of course, I sent him the layout for each page, kind of what I was looking for. But I like to let my guys have their own, they're the creative people, and I don't get real nitpicky. I wanted to be historically correct. Like we had to fix the boots. Like he had the old like tanker boots, that leather that went around the laces. And I go, oh man, no, man, I got it. You got it. I will have people blowing up my inbox.
Let me explain how important boots are in this context.
Correct. Yeah. Let me tell you how important paratrooper boots are. Yeah. So but it was small things like that. But that's the fun of the process, right? And so, that was the neat part of he's got some creative licensing, but I wanted it to be as accurate as I could. I didn't want somebody to go, well, this is just absolutely not even close to being a real story that's going to bring any history to my kids. So there's probably a couple things in there that somebody's going to go, hey man, that's not really accurate. It is what it is. Some of it's just the logistics, right? To get a guy to go back and recreate, I missed something, and he goes, all right, well, man, that's going to be some extra money. And so, hey, man, I'm just a cop on a cop's budget over here. So we're doing the best we can. It's no
Roger
Mona
that.
Lisa. But I cannot complain in any way, shape, or form with how it came out, especially the cover, because the cover is that really bright paper. I almost wish I could have the cover paper throughout the entire book because it's just so crisp and bright, and his colors and depth and all that stuff is just phenomenal. I fell in love with Patrick the first time I saw him. So
That's awesome. And it is an absolutely amazing photo, or not photo, but
yeah,
illustration, excuse me.
yeah, yeah.
The So transitioning from talking about the illustrations as wonderful as they are, and the process behind them, your process, did you just tell the story the way you would have told it appropriately to an elementary school kid if you were in a school? Did you talk to any educators? How did you get your text at the level that you thought would be okay, this is where a kid's gonna understand what the story I'm trying to convey at the age level that I'm targeting?
Yeah, and that's a great question because I had to try to pull myself into that 10-year-old boy. Um, and I think that was where I went. Because as most of us 10-year-old boys, we love to play outside and play with guns and sticks that were guns and things like that. So yeah, I tried to pull myself down into that 10-year-old boy and the adventure really that war would be for a 10-year-old boy who doesn't know the reality, right? When we were 10, we didn't understand any of those concepts, but I wanted to show the adventure for him, and it's not till the end that he really starts to see that the adventure is much more real, and not so fun. But that's where I put myself, and I can still picture myself when I made sticks into toys and sticks into ninja things and stuff when I was a kid. So I still watch cartoons. It's no secret. Anybody who knows it, I still watch cartoons, and so I'm a big kid at heart, and so it's not any work or effort for me to pull myself back into a 10-year-old Chris.
Got it. So I want to loop back to the illustration now based off what you said, because one thing Ricardo nailed, and I don't know if you guys collaborated or if he just got it. Going back to the cover illustration, Patrick has this like aggressive smile on his face as he's exiting the aircraft, and it's a little less smiley and a little less aggressive by the time you get all the way to the eagle's nest. And he just, each frame he kind of captures more gravitas. Was that intentional on your part? And you said, hey, this is what I want it to look like, or did Ricardo just get it?
No, he did, and that was intentional because I wanted the reader to understand when he does have that good smile, and it's a bright sunny day on that paratroop jump on the front cover, right? Which was those guys' mindsets, right? They were adventure seekers and adrenaline junkies. But in the end, yes, I wanted him to look haggard, and to convey that war had taken its toll on him. It's subtle, and I'm so glad you got it. And for the listeners, I did not set you up with that question. I'm so glad you got it because yes, I want them to understand the transition Like I said, war is not a video game, and even a 10-year-old boy is haggard and tired, and he misses his buddies, and his buddies got hurt, and that's the reality of what these guys did. And so planting that seed on all of those aspects is very important to me.
No, absolutely fantastic. Another aspect, and we've addressed it without calling it out, the idea that it's told from a 10-year-old's perspective fully, by which I mean never at any time is anybody like, hey, Patrick, you're 10. Why are you in my platoon? He's just there with the guys the way a 10-year-old boy would think. Like I'm here too, and I'm doing it, and everyone just accepts it, and he
That's
falls
good.
in and jumps out of the airplane. So that
Yeah.
was really it captured the perspective of, hey, I'm a 10-year-old dude and I'm doing it without having to call it out. It's accepted as a fact by everyone that he's with.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because I want them to put themselves there. I want them. Yeah, Patrick doesn't grow up. Patrick's 10 all the way through. Rock and Easy Company, 10-year-old boy. Absolutely.
But it's really well done. So your goal, as you said, none of the boys are with us anymore, as we know. So they can't go to the schools anymore, and you're getting their voice in there still, and you do that through Doc Row Publishing. So if you could, we've addressed Doc Row Publishing before, but now would be a great time, maybe so we get some new subscribers listening, if we can talk about the mission of Doc Row Publishing and how it's specifically getting Patrick the Paratrooper into kids' hands.
Yeah. So I love the name. It's honoring my grandfather and what he did, and the legacy that he left us, for so many. I still get messages from around the world. I still, to this day, like most of us in the family, your grandfather inspired me, and I joined the Army because your grandfather. I became a medic because your grandfather. I became an EMT because of your grandfather. And so for me to honor his legacy and keep telling these stories and keep the memory alive and keep inspiring, right, the next generation. In 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, who's the next kids that I'm going to get an email from going, hey man, I read your book, I made me watch Band of Brothers, I'm going to join the Army and become a medic now. And it's just, like you talk about it, it'll make me cry. Anybody knows me knows I'm a crier. But that's so important for me. And then, we have, the family has a foundation. We have a 501c3, the Band of Brothers Family Foundation. And we do a little bit of fundraising. We're no major Warren Buffett. I just saw that Warren Buffett donated $4.6 billion worth of his stock. And I go, can I get a little bit of that? And so through that foundation, we put my book in schools. And so that's just my passion to continue being, the Malarkey and the Winters and the Bill and Babe and the Compton. That's my effort to walk in their footsteps and make sure that these stories get into schools. And so some kid's going to come across that bookshelf in the school library and go, hey man, this is really cool. And that's the seed I want to plant. So now with Patrick, I can plant that seed in middle school that I couldn't plant with my first book. My first book's middle school and up. And but now I can plant that seed in elementary, middle, and high school. And so to get the next generations excited about honoring and learning about our World War II veterans is just a huge passion for me.
Which is amazing. Now you've got the grassroots organization of Doc Row Publishing and your foundation. So you're kind of, I don't want to say flying under the radar, but it's not like the publication of Patrick the Paratrooper made big news and everybody was eagerly lining up at the bookstore. But because you're kind of focused on, for lack of a better term, old-fashioned values, has anybody been like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be talking to 10-year-old kids about war? It's too much. They've got too much on their minds in the 21st century. Has there been any pushback, for lack of a better term?
No, I can't recall anything in 10 years that's given me any sort of negative in that regard.
And I'm very happy to hear that, because there shouldn't be. This isn't about glorifying war. This is about telling men's stories.
Yeah. And, like I said earlier, patriotism, taking care of your buddies, sacrifice, service, enlistment, volunteering, all of these things are themes. Brotherhood obviously comes in there because he talks about that. Those are all themes that I intentionally put in a book for 10-year-old boys and girls. that we're just not getting in today's society. We're losing these values that the Winners and the Buck Comptons and the Bill and Babes and the Markeys would roll over in their grave to know that their grandkids and great grandkids ages are shunning the flag, and they're offended by the Pledge of Allegiance and these things that we see on the news. And it's just like, man, we are a sinking ship. And so I intentionally put those values in there. I use those words when I sign my book. I use the word Patrick's bravery and patriotism. Because I want to emphasize and reemphasize those words and those values that we've got to have as a society, or else we won't have a society, in my opinion. So these guys gave us a awesome example of what it is to be an American, and I just want to honor that and remember that.
Oh, fantastic. So now the book's out, and yeah, I'm sure the reviews are rolling in, and it sounds like you're getting a very positive reception. Are you going to try to tie anything into the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion coming up next year?
So next year's the big events. Yeah. So next year's the big 80. Yes. And so, I would love to get some of the actors back over there, if I can put together use whatever little bit of pool I have to get the guys together back again to honor for the 80th, because there's going to be a lot of people there. So yeah, the actors bring a lot of people, as they should. And so I'd love to get together with those guys and do a big giant book signing, and just across Utah and Bastogne, and have those guys together. I miss them. They're good friends of mine. So I'd love to, any chance that I can be together with them, and then also get Patrick in the hands of people. And my first book in the hands of people is always a mission. Always a mission. Every year, every June I could be in Normandy, and every December I could be in Bastogne. It would not hurt my feelings in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, we're working. We'll see what we can do. It's tough. Those guys have busy schedules, and so the challenge is always trying to get them to get all together in one place. But man, if I can get one or two of them, especially my boy Shane, if I can get one or two of them in the same place, and we can share Patrick with the people, I'm there.
Very cool. So one thing that was cool about your first book, and I feel bad because I have a signed copy sitting behind me. I didn't think to grab it when I grabbed Patrick. I can't remember the precise title.
How Easy Company Became a Band of Brothers.
There we go. Exactly. So that one I know you have had translated into multiple languages. Is there intent to do the same thing with Patrick?
So my French translator, Miss Natalie, has already indicated that even when I had the idea, she was already I'm in, I'll translate it. So and my Chinese translator, Regia, has already indicated that she wants to translate it in Chinese. So yeah, my first book is in French, Dutch, German, and Chinese. And so two of those have already indicated they're ready to get it translated over there. And my first book, I have personally mailed that book to 23 countries outside of the U.S.
That's amazing.
That is a testament to the story, to the men, to HBO's production, to the actors, to everybody, front of the camera, behind the camera, and the story of the men. It's just a testament to what these guys invoke in people's emotions, and how valuable this story is to getting people interested in our World War II veterans. And so it's just a neat thing. And I'm glad to play a little bit of part and try to reach and teach, as I like to say, the next generations, and get people inspired and learning about it.
Absolutely awesome. You're definitely doing it. So last question, because I know it's your birthday weekend. I want to be able to let you go and enjoy yourself. But so we talked about the 80th coming up. We've talked about, the latest book coming out, the plans you have for that. You're sitting there wearing this awesome, Band of Brothers reunion t-shirt. I know you guys, the Descendants, have their reunions every year. Any possibility you guys would tie a reunion next year into the 80th somehow? Or is that just a bridge too far?
That's something that we haven't talked about. So at the end of each reunion, we plan the next year's reunion. So I guess this reunion in October will have to be part of the conversation. Is where we go, right? What city do we pick, and then how do we tie it to the 80th? That's good. I hadn't thought about it, but there you are. Look at you. You are. I need to put you on the payroll, man. You're thinking. You're thinking ahead for me. I need a good consultant to get me on schedule. So
no worries, pal. Pro bono.
Pro bono. I work for Diet Coke. So yeah, that's good. We'll have to. yeah, that will real our location is going to be really important next year, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. It sounds like you guys do an awesome job every year though with location. I think it's fantastic. We've had some. You've been on reunion episodes before where we
Yeah.
talked about with Lowe's Jr. and things like that. But you guys are a living memorial. That's absolutely beautiful, man.
We're and it's a blessing. It's to be friends with Luz and Compton and Malarkeys and Gordons, and and have them as a literally daily part of our lives. Between social media and text messages and phone calls, there's not a day goes by, literally not a day goes by that Easy Company is not in my life, and these people are not in my life. And so that's for 20 years plus now, these people have been so very special to me, and they are definitely family, and it's a fun. Uh,
No, there you go, man. I understand, and you've touched a lot of
very
lives,
blessed.
as you know.
Very,
You guys have even had an impact on my life. As you've indicated, I come from a military family. I'm a soldier myself. My kids knew dad was a soldier, but they were never really interested until my daughter watched Band of Brothers, and that's what got her asking questions about her own family. So exactly the motivation that the original men had getting into the schools, your legacy and the miniseries legacy is still doing that today. So I want to thank you for that.
thank you.
All right. So everybody, this has been Chris Langlois, a fantastic friend of the show and always a wonderful guest, talking about his latest book, Patrick the Paratrooper. I highly recommend it. You can reach out to Doc Row Publishing to order yourself a copy. So Chris, thank you very much for being on the show, brother.
Ben, good to see you, brother, man.
Hey, happy birthday.
Hey, thanks, bro. Bye.